I'm Sam Calagione, founder and brewer of Dogfish Head Brewery, coming to you guys with my great friends Arshay Cooper and Jack Carlson of Rowing Blazers. It's great to be here with you guys today.
Awesome.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here to just represent Jack, represent Sam, and then represent Arshay. Here we go.
Woo-woo.
Nice. Nice. So I'm going to start. I want to do a little go-around game and kind of find out the 3 degrees of separation from each of us, because I think you guys have known each other longer than I've been lucky enough to know each of you separately, and it was kind of kismet that the 3 of us came together. So chronologically speaking, I want to start by hearing your guys' story and how you guys met.
Well, we were just talking about this. Arshay, do you remember how we first met? I know we have many different sort of connections, and I know we've both been involved in Row New York, an organization we both are very passionate about. And I remember you coming to the Rowing Blazers office before Rowing Blazers even launched, I think, when our office was like a little closet in the Nomad district of New York. And I remember you coming there, and we were just, kind of shooting the breeze, and you were working on your book at that point. But I don't remember actually I think we had met once or twice before that. Do you remember?
Yes, I think I remember now. You had an event, and I got an email, and Jenny Treyas asked me, "Hey, you should come to Jack Carlson event." It was in Midtown.
Was it a Ralph Lauren?
Ralph Lauren, that's where it was
that's
at.
what I thought.
And I remember saying, she's like, everyone's gonna dress nice. It's this funky event, and I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna be all this. I walk in the door, I see Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss, and then I just see pizza everywhere, and I was like, this is my kind of party, you know what I mean? Everyone had their blazers on and they had their pizza, but I think that's where we met. And then the second time we actually emailed with each other, and we talked about our passion to see youth of color involved in the sport, right? Like, we both believe in the organization that we do a lot of work with, believe that talent is everywhere, but it's access and opportunity that is not. And I think that that's how we kind of just got together, and we talked about mutual friends that we had in the sport. You took me to Five Guys, and I met one of your partners who loved shoes, and that's where it started.
That's right. You met David, and ever since then, Arshay, for anybody who doesn't know this, is like the most inspiring man in all of rowing. And as a result, Arshay is always giving these incredible, very inspirational, very motivational speeches about how he got into the sport and the impact the sport's had, on him, and, some positive changes that we can make in the sport. And I've been lucky enough to hear Arshay speak a number of times, and for whatever reason, Arshay, you often single me out. You often give me a shout out. Maybe even every time I've heard you speak, you give me a shout out, and I'm always like, "Oh my, I haven't done anything here."
Yeah.
But it's always so nice, so inspiring, and I'm just so happy for you, man. All your success with the book, A Most Beautiful Thing. If anybody watching doesn't know, it's how could you not know? Because it's been everywhere, getting all kinds of praise and accolades. Incredible story of, is this right? It's the first all-black high school rowing team.
High school rowing team. There was the college team in Howard. And
Howard University had it.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so the first all-black high school rowing team now turned into an incredible film, an incredible documentary. So just now my turn to shout out to you, to just embarrass you. I'm sure everybody watching knows already, but check it out if you have not.
And we're gonna dig into the book a little bit and the movie, but Jack, you in your own right have done a lot for the sport of rowing. You mentioned Row New York, but you're also very much involved with U.S. rowing. Can you talk a little bit about how you get to use the brand of Rowing Blazers to bring more people into the sport, as Arshay mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky. I just kind of sort of fell into the sport, to be honest. I grew up playing Little League baseball. I was lucky enough to go to a high school that had rowing. It was on the banks of the Charles River in Cambridge, Massachusetts. All my friends were doing it, and I decided to get involved. But it is a sport that still has, access issues. It still has, of course, connotations of, elite boarding schools and Ivy League colleges. And it's been something that I've been passionate about for a long time, increasing the diversity and increasing access to the sport, because it's definitely a sport that's, to say it's changed my life is like a huge understatement. I don't know where I'd be or what I'd be doing if I had not gone out for rowing, if I had stuck with baseball, because God knows I was not playing baseball in college. And I don't think I was making the U.S. national baseball team. But the sport of rowing has a very unique position made for, sort of short, loudmouth guys like me. That's called the coxswain. So I was able to just find my natural little niche, and I sort of let the sport carry me to many interesting places, to Oxford, to the U.S. national team. And it's very apparent. Speaking frankly, the lack of diversity in the sport is very apparent, in the national team. It's reflected through all levels of the sport. So, it's something that I thought is really worth getting involved with, the efforts to change the complexion of the sport, really. And I wrote a book called Rowing Blazers back when I was at Oxford. I don't know, 6 years ago or so it came out. Launched the book in collaboration with Ralph Lauren. That's where Arshay and I think first might have met. And that was my first sort of little partnership with Row New York. We donated, and Ralph Lauren also donated, I believe, a portion of the proceeds from that night to Row New York. And I'll say at that time, I was kind of like, oh, it sounds nice. Sounds like a interesting organization. That's great. Like kind of showing kids who might not normally have access to the sport, sort of like what it's like to get out on the water. And I didn't realize at the time, like actually how robust and serious an organization it is. So I've, been fortunate enough to get more involved in that. Rowing Blazers does a lot of partnerships with that organization. We make blazers for all the graduating high school seniors every year, and also sponsor some of their events. But it's a great thing to be involved with. We're also a partner of U.S. Rowing as well, of course. Rowing it's kind of like the last amateur sport in this country. It's not a sport that you can flick on ESPN and see very easily. So it is very cool through the brand, through Rowing Blazers. While it's not meant to be taken all that literally, to have a lot of connections to the sport of rowing, hopefully contributing to, some positive change in the sport as well, and getting it into people's minds and in front of people's eyes in a way that they might not normally experience.
Yep. Well said. And Arshay, you're based in New York now, as are you usually, Jack. Your story as it unfolds in the book and in the movie is mostly centered around growing up in Chicago. I'm sure it's challenging in the COVID moment, but you're involved with programs in multiple states. Maybe talk to us a little bit about some of the programs you're involved in, which ones you're spending the most time with.
Yeah, so the book came out, and incredible response to that, the film. And once the film came out, everyone's, we was on Wall Street Journal, featured in LA Times, and, the Today Show, many different, the Sports Illustrated, all great things. And then all these, folks from not even as involved in the sport of rowing was like, how do we give, right? How do we create more of that most beautiful thing story in neighborhoods like the West Side of Chicago, Detroit, and New York. And, and so we started a Most Beautiful Thing Inclusion Fund, right? Which will bring, not even just bring more programs to cities like those, but help elevate programs, right? Row New York is really, ran very well. They've been there for a while, but there are a lot of programs that are out there that, never had a new boat, right? Boat 20 years old, right? Only can afford to go 3 days a week. There are programs here that, only have one coach or can't afford academic support. So what this fund do is go into those cities and identify those programs and help give them all the tools they need so they can compete with the other programs in their city, right? And not only that, hopefully get recruited into college and it's great sports. My ultimate goal is to see that national team, that Olympic team, reflect the diversity in our country, right? In 2028, the Olympics is here in LA, right? And there are young people that's in the sport, right? And that look like me and just need more tools, right? And I think that boat should really reflect the diversity in this country. So that's one of my goals, and we're working on that with this fund, and I'm excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you wrote that you shared the story that there have been 4 Olympics in America, and in that time, there's only been one, black rower, a woman that's gotten to race in an American waters for the gold. Is that right?
No, so there have only been 5 Black Olympians in the history of our country, and there's only been one that raced on American soil in the Olympics in '84.
Yeah, that's incredible. So we got time, and we got the passion to make it happen.
And Jack has the gear. He's making the sport real cool. I was like, I gotta say, Jack, that our team, we're from the west side of Chicago, right? And we still rock our style. They rock Air Force Ones. And Mary Mazia, who's our film director, was like, hey, I'm working with Jack. Gonna give you guys some rowing blazers. And my guys were like, we're not wearing rowing blazers. Like, are you kidding, right? And they was like, I don't know if we want to wear those. And there was this group chat. And then she sent the picture and delivered the rowing blazers. These guys were so excited. We was at the premiere, Jack, in DC, and everyone was complimenting Jack. They just loved it. They wouldn't take it off, and they was, and everyone was asking about them. So Jack really do a good job with moving in a direction of where the world is going and where young people is going. He's, it's a sport that's all about their traditions, right? And Jack is breaking those barriers, right? And allowing young people to fall in love with some of the things that come with the sport.
I appreciate that a lot. Well, it looks great on you, by the way. All those photos you guys at the premiere were incredible. You're too kind, though, man. You're like my hype man over here.
Well, Jack, in your book, you write about the history of the blazer, and it actually was kind of sort of, I think you said, like the hoodie of its day. What did you mean by that? I read about you write about that.
Yeah, I mean, my book started as really like a passion project intended for the rowing community. It ended up really taking off among the fashion and menswear communities, which I did not expect. It's a fairly niche topic. I'm writing about the history of the blazer in the sport of rowing, but the blazer originates in the sport of rowing. It was originally like a warm-up jacket that rowers at Cambridge and Oxford would throw on to go down to practice, and maybe they'd keep it on while they're warming up in the boat. And they started wearing it, to social occasions as well. They started wearing it around their colleges as well. It's very kind of casual, rebellious. I mean, there was no tech fabrics, there was no cotton jersey at the time. So you're wearing like wool flannel, very casual jacket. This is in an era when people are wearing like white tie and tails, to go to dinner most of the time. So it was considered like a very casual, very almost kind of rebellious clothing item to wear. And it started in the sport of rowing with all these different rowing clubs. And so the book tells the history of that. And the book also is the result of really traveling all around the world to all these different rowing clubs in US, Australia, Netherlands, Argentina, Germany, South Africa, all over the place. One thing that was kind of important, to me in the book, though, was also capturing to some extent, the diversity of the sport, what diversity the sport already has. And actually, I mean, that was great history that I wasn't aware of, Arshay. Some of those stats that you just mentioned. We have actually in the book a photo of an original photo that we took of Lawrence Ndlovu, who's the first Black Olympic gold medalist in the sport of rowing, representing South Africa. He won the gold in the lightweight men's 4 in London. But yeah, it's a book that kind of just unexpectedly in a way, sort of took off in a world that I wasn't actually that familiar with. And that was my sort of entree into the world of clothing and apparel, like not just writing about it, but by working with Ralph Lauren on the launch, actually, having some exposure to the industry.
And that's what drove you to start Rolling Blazers? Was that
Yeah,
moment, or when in your history did you say, okay, I want to take this from researching it and the love of the sport to actually getting involved with building this awesome brand?
Yeah, that planted the seed of the idea of starting my own brand. It's been a weird sort of like adventure. The book came out. I went back over to England. I was doing a PhD in archaeology at the time. I'm like all over the place, right? I finished that up. I come back to Massachusetts and I become a high school teacher and high school rowing coach. And I start sort of in earnest pursuing the idea of starting my own brand, starting Rowing Blazers brand. And the idea of the brand is really to be very authentic, to really kind of do our homework, do the research, to be very true to the way that a lot of, not just Blazers, but also rugby shirts, a whole bunch of other products were originally and historically kind of made, so really putting authenticity first and foremost, but also, kind of shedding some of the stuffiness that often comes with, sort of quote unquote preppy clothes, because that's really the types of clothes that we're talking about. I kind of avoid that word because it has so much baggage attached to it, and people think of different things when they hear that word. But really
like
trying
pretension and be an elitist and pretension and those kinds of things.
Exactly, like exclusivity in a negative sense. Stuffiness. There's a lot of baggage, like exactly with exclusivity, and I think that the idea is really to have like a little more sense of inclusiveness for sure, but also irreverence, also a sense of irony, a sense of fun to what we do. I think a lot of clothing brands, especially in this space, are very sort of like buttoned up, take themselves very seriously. They try to sell a dream that's like, living on like an English, country estate and so on. And, I think actually, hey, most people wearing blazers, most people wearing rugby shirts, polo shirts, whatever they are, they kind of think that's cool, but I think there's a lot else cool out there to tap into. And, I think we try to take some lessons and philosophies from the world of streetwear and incorporate them into what we're doing, and basically just, have a little bit more fun with what we do. And that's sort of how I fell into this world. I went back onto the national team after teaching and coaching high school for 2 more years, and starting the brand was like my side project. We're training mostly in Princeton. It's where the U.S. men's team was based when I was there. And I would come up to New York and run around the garment district and just try to figure out how to start a clothing brand,
Well, you're making it work. And I think that's another thing that the 3 of us do share. Like at Dogfish, we say we take beer really seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. Our mission, our rallying cry is off-centered ales for off-centered people. I think it comes through both in the book and in the movie, Arshay, and that, you guys have come into the sport with a lot of knowledge on the team. You get respect for the sport, but you don't change yourselves to reflect what the sport's looks like. You say, no, we're going to bring ourselves to this sport. And it really feels like, to Jack's word, authentic, that journey. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit? Let's get a little bit into the book. If we're here, we are days away from Black Friday. Folks can go out, buy the book. Maybe encapsulate that sort of philosophy.
Yeah, it's everything that's in the book really addresses the current times, right? And when you say the current times was 20 years ago. The same stuff was happening, right? There's just some things that are captured different, but it was the 90s in Chicago, a community that was built on trauma, right? Most of the families who lived in Chicago were families who left the South because of public lynching, right? And so they came there with a lot of untreated trauma, and you think about right away when someone sees someone who a mass shooting or someone that died, even in some of the suburban schools, right away they send in these trauma counselors, which they should, right? And our grandmothers have seen it all the time, and there was no one to see, right? And then our generation, the same way, it was just more gun violence, right? We skipped over pools of blood. We lost friends. We lost teammates to gun violence. We heard gunshots when we slept. We ran for our lives, right? We witnessed what most soldiers have seen in war, but before we were 15 years old. And, and so there was really no resources to even talk through those things. And you had sports. And I tried out with a football team. And I wanted to fight every time. The coach was like, knock him dead, right? And I want to fight because it's triggering that trauma I had, right? Or I tried out for the basketball team. And, it's a trash talking sport, so I wasn't that good, right? You hear things like you garbage or you suck or you're never going to be good. But I heard that stuff growing up from teachers and other people, so I wanted to fight after that. But I remember the first time rowing came to my school, and we went to the boathouse. And not to hype Jack up too much, what I appreciate about the images that he is changing through his gear in the sport of rowing is that I remember, although I knew that rowing was an opportunity for me, I had a lot of hesitations because of the images at the boathouse didn't reflect the images I was used to, the images that I saw in Chicago. And so I was like, I'm not sure if it's for me, right? And but I tell you, the moment we were pushed out in open water, after a couple of weeks, the same survival mode that kicks in when you hear a gunshot that says run, it kicks in when you're out there in open water, and it tells you in order to get back to the dock safely, you must pull for each other. And to do that, you have to shut up and listen. That's when the coxswain comes in. Sit tall, breathe. You belong here. You have a right to be here, right? Speaking life into you. And then that's when you begin to develop that magical rhythm. You find the magic in the boat when you're following each other. You find that connection. And before it becomes a sport of competitiveness, it became a sport of meditation first, a sport of healing, right? It's a rhythmic sport, right? You're doing the same thing over and over again. There are no police sirens. There are no broken street glass. There's no bullying. There's no fans everywhere. It's just you and your teammates. And you feel the waves in the water, right? And it's a beautiful thing. My teacher used to say to us that you guys are a walking storm, but I always say the sport was the only sport that calmed the storm in us, right? And so the book really talks about the recovery on water. And after that, the lessons that the sport has to teach, right? Simple lessons like that you use in your everyday life, right? The one lesson I learned in the boat is that I can't do the work of 8 people, but I need 8 people to do the work, and we'll get there much faster. And I use that in every job, right? And how do you leave the boat? Our coaches say, leave the boathouse better than you found it, even if you don't make the mess, right? And in every classroom, every Zoom meeting, every speech, Jessica would say, how can I leave the room? How can I leave the boathouse better than I found it, right? Even if I didn't make the mess, right? I simply want the sport to be better because I'm here. And it was those simple lessons. It was being on the water every day that really changed our mentality, our lives, our weight, right? Everything. And so that's what the story is all about, right? And how do we create more access and more opportunity? And what are some of the hesitations? What are some of the obstacles when the opportunity presents itself? And the book covers all those different things.
Jack, what do you say to that?
Dude, this is why it's so hard to be on a panel discussion with Arshay, which I think I have been before. It's hard to follow Arshay in a speech. You always at these U.S. rowing or Row New York dinners, you're just pitying the person when you look at the program who has to speak after Arshay. You're just people going up to that person as soon as they see the program. They're just like patting the guy in the back, like, nice knowing you, buddy. But that's why Arshay is the best,
A great evangelist for the sport.
But that's what we about, Sam. It's like the I can't do the work of 8, but we need 8 people to do the work. Like, it's like, it's not just, it can't be just the Arshay Cooper that's introducing the sport to a diverse crowd. It can't just be Jack, or it can't just be a man that rode New York. It has to be rowing, right? It has to be the people outside of rowing, right? Sam, the way you introducing us, the work that we're doing together, right? To introduce rowing to kids through boarding school, or the invitation that you have through the boathouse that you're working on, that I'm sure that we'll talk more about. But if you get the whole 8 moving, man, we get there much faster.
And not just the what I love about the book, if you're listening or watching and you rather drink your beer while you're in front of the TV than reading a book, you're in luck, because there's a beautiful documentary out of the same name as the book, but it actually tells a different iteration of that story, where what I loved about reading the book first is that I got to go deeper with the story of the other 7 people. When Arshay says it takes 8 in the movie, you get to see their story and their family story to a greater degree than
the
in
other
the book.
8 people. Don't forget about the coxswain.
My bad.
Yeah. So it tells the story of everyone in the boat, is the way I should have framed that, and so very, very complimentary stories, and super cool. You got Common is actually narrating that, and just amazing. An amazing soundtrack, which reminds me, we're getting a bunch of questions in right now, and I'm going to take a question from the folks that are watching for each of us. It's this one. If you could have only one beer and listen to one band or musical artist's entire discography for 1 week, what would it be? That's the first go-around game question. Does anyone want to raise their hand and want me to answer first?
Yeah, you answer first.
All right, I'll answer first. And I'm going to up the game and say, not only you get that artist's discography, but you got everyone that artist has ever recorded with's discography too. So you can go in some tangents from whoever you choose as the artist. So I am going to go, and I'm not making this up. I am going to go SeaQuench, and we'll talk about what we did with Rowing Blazers together around SeaQuench in a minute. But in my 25 years,
I was going to say SeaQuench. You got to pick something else.
Fine. All right. For Jack, I'm going to pick something else. So, okay, good. I'm going to do then. All right, this is easy too. I'm going to do 60-minute IPA. Dogfish invented this concept of continual hopping, and the machine we invented it with is now in the permanent collection of the Smithsonian, a converted old vibrating football game. So this beer is dear to my heart. And I am going to go with the discography of Prince, because I absolutely love him from the earliest albums. Controversy is a favorite of mine, 1999. Sign of the Times, probably the most underrated double album of all times. And, of course, Purple Rain. But then I get to hit all the artists that he ever recorded with. So I'm going to go with Prince as my artist, and I'm going to drink 60-minute all week long. Who's up next?
I'll go. I mean, SeaQuench all the way. Very drinkable. If you're going to be drinking here for an extended period of time while listening to an artist's entire discography, you want the SeaQuench. And the artist is for me because I have very eclectic musical taste. I mean, I'm not the same way I guess I have sort of very eclectic style tastes. I feel like I have very eclectic musical tastes. I don't know. I mean, I've been on a Fleetwood Mac kick lately, of course, because, we got the viral video. Maybe, I mean, part of me also wants to say, like, I really like M83. I really like Phoenix. I really like Washed Out. I might have to actually land on Washed Out. If
Washed
I had
Out.
one, Washed Out.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Great.
Do you know Washed Out?
Great indie rock, and I'm great fan of M83. They did Wide Awake, I'm Dreaming, right? Isn't that one of their albums?
Yep.
Beautiful.
This guy
music.
knows.
Beautiful music.
We're doing SeaQuench and Washed Out.
I mean,
Take us home.
I'm a fruit guy. I love fruit guy. So I'm gonna go Super 8.
Oh, yes. Yes. Staying in the sour beer.
Yes. I'm gonna go Super A. And I tell you, again, like it's hard when it comes to music because everyone inspires, right? But I think for me, I would have to go Outkast. And I would go Outkast not only because the different elements of music that they produce, but there's still stuff that I'm listening to that I've never heard, right? Even if I listen to the song 20 times, I'm like, that one sentence is a whole speech for me. Like I listen to them and listen to one line and say, I can make a speech from them. Like they go into some crazy stuff that I have to really Google, like, what does this mean, right? Still to this day, and you get to jam out. So I'm a big, huge Outkast fan, so I'm going to go with Outkast.
Great call.
Yep.
That is. And I never listen to music that might inspire me to write a speech, Arshay. This is why you're so good and people fear going after you on a presentation. But that was an awesome call because you can go Outkast you can go from Outkast to Erykah Badu, from Erykah Badu to My Morning Jacket, who play together. You would have a sick discography of everything they ever went with. What were you going to say, Jack?
I'm a Georgetown guy. I went to Georgetown for my undergrad, and they have some great Georgetown references as well.
Well, I have to say this. There's one thing we got in common. Mark Mendel.
Yeah, we have that in common. Arshay and I had the same rowing.
Mark Mendel. Really? In what era of each of your lives?
So I had Mark Mendel I was the first kid he coached in high school at the Manly Crew program in the 90s. And I think he went to one school, and right after that he went to Georgetown, and that's where Jack met him.
Yeah, Mark Mandel rowed at Northwestern, so he kind of has, some Chicago roots. He coached you guys, and then I think he started his collegiate career coaching at Florida Tech, and then he became the freshman coach at Georgetown. And he was my freshman coach, and we just have this weird thing. This is like this weird sort of rowing geography, Yeah. But we didn't know that. We didn't know that until very recently.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm going to ask a go-around game based on something Arshay said in his book. So this is one of the sentences I notch, very powerful, which is, I guess, a couple sentences. You wrote, on my block, you were respected for carrying a gun and criticized for carrying a book. I always hope it would change because I didn't want other kids to grow up like I did, never knowing what it's like to feel hope, which is just a amazingly powerful sentiment that I can't, I can't imagine that experience that you lived through and you grew through. So I'm going to ask each of us to say, maybe just name a couple of books that inspired us on our journeys and gave us hope, whether it's from a personal perspective or that informed the journey of the work that we've chosen to do with our lives. Arshay, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to go first.
Yeah.
That way, Jack has to follow you. I'll follow Jack. I'm easy.
So rude. So rude.
I'm not going to go deep to it.
I'll
but
go
I
next.
think number one is like The Alchemist, right? The Alchemist. I love The Alchemist. It's a lot of knowledge and power in that book. One of my favorite lines is that when you're close to your personal legend, when you're close to your destiny, the soul of the world will come and test you with everything you have learned along the way. You know what I mean? And I felt that, right? Every time I feel like I'm close to something, there's this test that I have to take in life, right? Like you got to remember all the things that you went through, right? And you can get past that, you go into the next level in your life, right? So that's not only in the classroom, but in your life. And so that book has a lot of wisdom and knowledge. And I think the second book, that I really love that, it drops I'm not going to go to that book. I say the first book I read as a high school kid, and there was this guy from my mom's church, and I didn't really read books that much. He said, if you read this book, I'll give you $50, and all you got to do is answer these 3 questions. And I was like, of course I read a book for $50. Like I didn't have any money, but that was his way of investing in young people. And he would pay them to read books, and these books will like change your life. And the name of the book was Developing the Leader Within You by John Maxwell. And that when I read that book, I talked about that's the moment I was like, I know what I have to do for my team now, and I became the captain of the team, right? And that book, it talks about, when you're young and you're just like a person that take action, and people will say, oh, you're a leader. People follow you. You're a leader of these followers. But that book teaches you. It changed my mentality. It teaches you that you're not a leader of followers, not just a leader of followers, or don't be a leader of followers, but how do you be a leader of leaders, right? And that's what I've learned, because everyone on my team was a leader of some gang or some clique, right? But how do you become the leader of those leaders? And so that was those were the two books I would recommend: Developing the Leader Within You and The Alchemist.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. All right, I'll go second, and then Jack will take us home. So mine would be so there's a book of that Ernest Hemingway did, a Midwest writer, called A Movable Feast. So it wasn't like fiction. It was like the story of him just coming out of the gates and finding his creative voice as a young writer living in Paris. And that's one of the books I read, that and J.D. Salinger's short stories and Franny and Zoe that I reread annually, because they really inspire me to stay, true to the my own creative voice as I get to, innovate recipes and do the fun work that I get to do. And the other is the autobiography of Miles Davis, which is just called Miles. And I only found out recently that the guy who runs the supply chain for our company, his dad, Quincy Troop, co-wrote it. Was Miles's? He was a teacher at in New York City, and he co-wrote it with Miles. And there's just so many amazing lessons in that book of this of a person on their own creative journey. And the quote that sticks with me the most from that is Miles Davis's nephew asked him, how did you become who you are? How did you stand out in a field with so many amazing artists, other jazz artists? And he said, well, don't play what's there, play what's not there. And as finding white space and whatever it is that you're doing in your life was really, really inspiring for me. So Miles, just called Miles, is his first name, is the name of the book, and Movable Feast. And with that, I'm moving to Jack.
That was excellent. I'm also a big fan of the short stories of J.D. Salinger, Franny and Zoe, Raise High, The Roof Beam Carpenter, and Seymour in Introduction. But I guess what I'd have to say, actually, I'm a very sort of intense person generally. Very, I like to go. I'm always thinking, there's no real lines between work and the rest of my life for me. So, work is something that's kind of always with me, always in my mind. And I like books that can kind of take me out of that and that instill a little bit of a sense of leisure. Leisure is a very important idea, very important principle from the classical world. And it's not one that I tend to take to heart probably as much as I should. So on that note, I really enjoy reading and rereading The Wind in the Willows, actually. I mean, basically children's book, but there's a great line in it that's very apropos to what we're discussing here, which is the line is, there's nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as just messing about in boats. And, it's kind of a good reminder. I don't know, Arshay, how often you get out in a boat these days. For me, it's not often, definitely not as often as I would like. Last time was the Head of the Charles a little over a year ago. But, there's just something in that moment, being out there in a boat with friends, with teammates. That's your whole world, and it's similar. Like Arshay, I did not go through any of the kind of stuff that you're talking about as a kid, and cannot even imagine it. But what I do know is when you're out there in the boat with your teammates, the rest of the world just totally melts away. And that's a great line. It's a great, just fun, obviously whimsical, very sort of nostalgic book. So I'm gonna say Wind in the Willows.
That's a great one. Let's talk about that, because I mean that's I'm at my happiest when I'm on the water. You know, I row, but I mostly do it by paddleboard when I'm on the water. And as a brewer, I say there's some sort of kismet in the fact that the human body is mostly water, beer is mostly water, earth is mostly water. You know, man is actually more at home on water when you combine all those things. What is it for you, Arshay? I mean, that quote is sums it up eloquently, Jack. What is it for you about what it feels like to be on water? I know you said when we started, you know, it's a form of meditation before it's a sport. But how do you kind of describe that?
Yeah, I think it's just that just sound mind, right? You're really downloading. Like we always got stuff going on, right? And we lose ourselves in a bunch of stuff, right? And you get a chance to really download serenity that comes with the water. I think that for people like, me and the guys who grew up with me, it you hear about the beauty that the water have and you never experienced it, right? Like water baptism brings life, but that was something that we wasn't really a part of. Or you like people will talk about on TV they experienced at the beach, right? And the calmness you and the peace you feel at the beach, or when you're in the shower, right? Just finally collecting your thoughts, or when it's a rainstorm, you just want to lock in. I mean, but to have all those moments at one time, really completes you and change your life. And so I try to get young people to understand all those different elements and why they will want some of those things and how some of those things really complete you, right? When you're near the water. And then I talked about it in the book as, it wasn't just a relationship with the sport, but it was also a relationship with the water, right? And I think, I don't know if in the soundtrack, one of the songs was called when my life get harder, I find ways in the water. You know what I mean? It's one of my favorite songs on the soundtrack, right? And this is and this came from a guy who never rowed, but he will walk to the water, right? And to just find peace, right? And so yeah, that's what I find. All those things that we find in if it was the beach or shower or a rainstorm or water baptism, I feel like when you spend 2 hours in a shell or paddle boating or whatever, you kind of go through all those elements in that 2 hour span instead of experiencing one thing.
Yeah. Yep. And Jack, even though you haven't raced since head of the Charles, I know that wherever you are, it seems like whenever I'm talking to you, you're in Florida or Boston or New York. You're in a state that's somewhere near the water. I don't think that's a coincidence.
I'm a big, I'm a big water guy. I love, I love swimming. I love going to the beach. I love, being near the water, and I love any opportunity also to get back into a rowing boat. I'm not exactly, totally coxswain sized anymore. Been
thanks to being
these days, but I do love any opportunity to get out there, and it's something that I miss, in my kind of daily life right now. The head of the Charles last year, by the way, I mean, that was just a hilarious experience. I got this text, I'm probably I don't know. I'm probably at least 50 pounds over normal coxing weight. But I got this text from this guy. He was just like, Jack, we want you to cox the head of the Charles. I don't know who this text is from. I'm like, okay, who is this? He's like, my name's Michelangelo. I'm the coach of the Italian national team. And that's who I ended up coxing last year in the head of the Charles. I had like 4 or 5 weeks just lose as much weight as I could. That was fun. But that was a pretty cool experience. It's a sport that just keeps on, sort of giving me cool things one way or another.
I could see that. And when we did reach out, I'd visited your store, Jack, and just felt a great affinity, for, our brand's shared passion for all things, water related, nautical themed. And we had a lot of fun over breakfast talking about the way into doing this collaboration together. And I'm rocking one of the shirts that has all the SeaQuench ingredients on it. This is the hat. I'm going to ask you in a minute, Jack, to talk about there you go. Nice. Right. and we took some inspiration from. Well, I'll let you talk about the inspiration for the design side of it. But the beer itself, we're super proud with SeaQuench Ale is now the best-selling sour beer in America, and it too has a massive nautical theme to it. I grew up in New England. The name of the brewery is Dogfish Head, named after a jet of land in Maine. You, in your collegiate rowing career, rode on the waters touching the Chesapeake. And SeaQuench Ale, it doesn't say it on the label. It says SeaQuench, so it's made with sea salt. But the salts that we source for it, some's from the mouth of the Chesapeake near where you rode, and some's we harvest from off the coast of Maine. So we said, let's really make sure we celebrate this love of the Atlantic coast, the East Coast, the Chesapeake in what we design together. Tell us, when we say we take ourselves seriously, or we take our work seriously, but not ourselves too seriously. Talk a little bit about the design, because your team, our Dogfish team, proudly kind of led on this part of the SeaQuench design, and the Rowing Blazer team really led on this side of the design. So maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, first of all, like when we first met, it was obvious that there was just a lot of synergy and a lot of just shared passion between us. And I kind of wanted the spirit of the collaboration and the design of the apparel and everything else that we've made. I mean, here I'm drinking out of the glass that we did together.
Yeah.
To be very sort of very fun, very whimsical, a little out there, a little bit nostalgic as well. It's like real sort of like 90s colorways almost. We've got the Dogfish out there, in a rowing boat, in a single. He's drinking a SeaQuench Ale. We obviously wanted to really celebrate the ingredients as well. And those are really the components. You see, obviously, you've got the ingredients there on the rugby shirt. Those are the things that we wanted to kind of instill into this collaboration. Is like that sense of fun, that sense of, like you said, it's kind of like taking your craft seriously, but not taking yourself too seriously. And everything we do at Rowing Blazers is, I think, instilled with a little bit of that sense of kind of nostalgia, and in this case, it's obviously sort of like retro colors. And that's really the inspiration behind the collection.
And then, like, separately, as you and I started to chat, I got to see a story about Arshay. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal magazine, a story. And almost concurrently, I started having conversations with both of you without knowing that you even knew each other. And then getting to know each of you separately and learning that you knew each other, I was like, oh shit, this is definitely kismet.
Arshay knows everybody, first of all. So.
I'm learning that, Jack. So I do want to say, for those folks that are watching, all this awesome stuff that Dogfish and Rowing Blazers did together is available right now on our website, dogfish.com. And we have a short sleeve polo version of the Rowing Blazers that has the embroidered ingredients in it. And for the first 100 folks that buy them, you're going to get a copy of Arshay's amazing book as a gift from Jack and I. And because you got to read the book. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. So we're glad to bring all three of these worlds together. Arshay, Jack, what are some things that we didn't get to that as we head towards signing off here in the next few minutes, that you wanted to make sure we got to say while we were all together?
I just want to put in a big plug once again for Arshay's book and also for the film, A Most Beautiful Thing. Arshay, what are the streaming platforms that you can watch A Most Beautiful Thing on?
Yeah, thanks. So The Most Beautiful Thing, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. You can watch it on Peacock, and if you got Xfinity Cable, you can watch it there. The book you can buy anywhere books are sold, and I know
you can buy it at rowingblazers.com.
Oh, at Rowing Blazers. Also, everyone who buys gear, right, Sam, gets a free book.
Yep. Anyone who goes to dogfish.com, buys the short sleeve polo, gets a free book. You get a book. You get a book. You get a book.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, and that's what's going on, and it's exciting. And now we get into feature film talk. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Hey, yeah, talk to, because my coworker Jessica, one of the questions that came in today was one of my own coworkers who said, "Your book reads like a movie to me. I absolutely love the documentary, but has Arshay ever considered turning the book into a movie, the story of his life?"
Yeah, there's so many people reaching out to us who wants to turn this film into a movie. Can't say who right now, but we are coming close to a deal, and it's exciting. I always say I don't care who you are. I don't care if it's 15-year-old Arshay, 8-year-old Arshay. Arshay needs to be played by Denzel Washington.
He's got the range. He could do it. He's got the range. Every age.
Every age.
And Jack, what about you? Closing out, you guys have valiantly gotten the store back open. We know it's been a challenge in New York, and it's been cool watching you guys pivot and how quickly you guys brought out the masks. And you got a lot going on. What do you want to leave with for folks who are excited to know what's on the horizon for Rowing Blazers?
It's been a crazy year, man. It has been a wild year, and we were originally supposed to record this like live in person, together in the store. We were supposed to do it, I think, like the day after the election. We probably should have realized that was maybe not a good idea, because in hindsight, it actually would have been fine. But all of Soho, which is where our store is in New York, was basically shut down and like boarded up that week. But yeah, I mean, the store, after being closed for 6.5, 7 months because of COVID, we got it back open again. Of course, online, rowingblazers.com has been carrying us, but it has been just a crazy year. To be a small business owner, it's been really, really nuts. We have a lot of exciting things coming out between now and the end of the year. We have 25% off on our site right now until Monday. So it's a good time to do a little Christmas shopping. I always go last minute. So this is one of these do as I say, not as I do type things. I'm always out there like on Christmas Eve looking for what's open. But no, I mean, I'm just very grateful to, have sort of made it through this year, grateful to be doing some cool projects. And grateful to you for this cool project and to be part of it. And cheers.
Well, cheers, gents. This has been an awesome hour hanging with each of you. I'm so proud of you on your journeys, and we will do this together in a real room, drinking real beers together sometime in 2021.
Mine is real beer. I don't know about you.
Real beer, but I want to be in a real room together. All three of us.
Sam, thank you for hosting. This was awesome. Can't wait to do more with you guys. And Jack, again, always good seeing you.
It's so you, man. It's so great to see both of you.
Yeah, this is a future podcast one day. This is a show. We can do a show almost every week. This is awesome.
I like the idea, man.
I like it.
All right, gents. Cheers and good night. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Cheers. Bye.